we are again, another of the new In Bob We Trust, the new vlog format. Gonna keep it going. Yeah, as a lot of you know, very soon, actually about a little over a week from now, I'll be in Seattle for PAX West for a panel with the other new folks from the reboot of The Escapist. We're going to talk about the story, basically, lay it all bare as to what happened there, how that all came to fall apart from what it was, and how it's now going to get put back together, hopefully, into a newer, better version thereof. And that got me thinking that I don't do a lot of personal storytelling online for the most part. I try to keep most of my personal life as much a secret as possible. Obviously, you've met my brother if you watch various shows. You follow me along. You probably see me post, family photos from events and whatnot. You probably saw me and my brother on vacation recently down in Cancun for my sister's wedding. You knew about when my father passed away. I, had posts about that. But I really try not to do the my personal life as an open book thing on here. It's just not me. When it comes to internet, social media sharing, I'm still a guy who's not used to the whole people have to take pictures of their dinner and food thing. But I do find myself often watching, personal testimonial videos and things that people post, and you do get a sense of who people are. And much as I am not a sharer of that kind of thing for the most part, in the interest of getting more content up for In Bob We Trust, so I get to thinking that maybe, stories and accounts and whatnot from my my past life, my history in the business and whatnot might make for some entertaining fodder, or at least might be of interest to you. And if there's a tie-in to something in some way going on right now, hey, more's the better, right? And so the story I'm going to record here, I'm going to try to give a shortened, abbreviated version thereof. The last video, I know the introductory thing was very long. Don't want this to be that long. I've told this story on a couple of panels. I've told it on some podcasts, but I don't know that I've ever put it up online for anyone to see in any form. If I have, I've forgotten about it. Certainly hasn't been on In Bob We Trust to my recollection. But it's one of those things when I read it back to myself, it was a very significant moment in my career and development and whatnot, and yet I rarely think about it today. And how it relates to this business with The Escapist is a lot of the reporting on this coming back together as it relates to me is, Bob is back on The Escapist. He's getting back one of the first things he was involved with. Believe it or not, I had already been active in film criticism, media writing, performing, whatnot for a bit of time before I got involved on The Escapist, since it was the first big thing I did on the internet after the Game Over Thinker and Big Picture and Escape to the Movies, both much, much bigger in terms of audience than Game Over Thinker probably ever was, just in terms of the reach that The Escapist had. So really the first time, most people had heard of me, I was around before, and, suffice it to say, The Escapist was not the first time that I being dismissed from The Escapist, I should say, not the first time I dealt with an unpleasant end to a part of a career. In fact, the first time I was ever employed professionally as a film critic, that ended in just not a way that I would ever have wanted anything to end. I'm going to leave out the names and dates of people otherwise who were involved in this, but I think you'll get the gist of what was happening here. I don't want to get anyone in trouble or get involved, so I'm not going to tell you what channel this was on or what the business is or the names of people who were involved, and if for whatever reason I let them slip out, you're going to see a beep in here. But yeah. But I do want to stress that everything I'm going to tell you here, every word of this is true. So this starts out back around 2002, 2003, probably starts in about 2002. I was working for the second time in Blockbuster Video. That was a thing that used to exist for you younger folks. This is not just like a joke we made up for sketches and whatnot. These used to be fucking everywhere. I had worked, that was my first job, was at a Blockbuster in high school. I worked there for several years. Then I worked in and assistant managed for a couple of years a Suncoast store, which was a video purchase store in a mall. That was probably my favorite retail job I ever had, was working in a Suncoast. That job ended. Had a succession of very good managers who were awesome. A couple of whom were still actually very good friends of mine. Then I had a manager after that, head store manager, I should say, who was a huge asshole, and that was the end of that job. But then I, after that, went back to another Blockbuster, run by another friend, and got myself in there and became an assistant manager at that store and stayed there for, I think I was there for 3 or 4 more years, as a professional assistant manager in a Blockbuster. Not a glamorous job, just checking people out, checking them out at the register, you filthy perverts. So one day, I'm ringing stuff up, and this is in not the town that I live in. This is in a smaller town nearby, away from the coast in Massachusetts. This is a North Shore town, but without a shore, up a very rural, small area. Guy comes in, he's looking to put out ads, which you can't do. You can't solicit in the stores. They had a policy about this, so I had to tell him no. But I had to ask him, hey, what are you advertising for? Sometimes I'd take a flyer. It's like, hey, buy a guitar or whatnot. And it turned out this guy was, he was advertising, he wanted a co-host for a cable access TV movie review show that he was going to produce locally in that town. I know this already sounds like a bullshit story, like that sounds like a fucking movie, but no, that was real. This is what he was doing. And of course, backstory, if you don't know about me, while working in these retail jobs, I am attempting to launch myself as a film journalist, independent filmmaker, whatever film related job I could get at the time. I had graduated about 5 years in the past from this. No, less than that, about 2 years. I'm terrible with time. Time slips away. I had graduated from Salem State College in Massachusetts, which is now a UMass, so I guess I'm a UMass grad. It was not a UMass at the time. It was building its campus up to become part of the UMass system by the time I graduated. So I had graduated with a Bachelor of Arts degree in multimedia, interactive multimedia, with a minor in film studies. So this guy comes in, and back on track. This guy comes in, and he is saying, I'm looking for a co-host for this show that I'm going to do for a local movie review show in this town. And this guy, he's like middle-aged, he's got kind of a buzz cut going, he's got I think he had a jacket on, like a police jacket. Later found out he's a ex-cop, ex-military, he's on some kind of disability retirement, early retirement. I'm not going to give you his name, obviously. He comes in and hands out this flyer to me, and he says, oh yeah, I'm looking for a co-host for this show. So I said, well, do you mind if I give you a call about this? Because I actually have a degree partially in film studies. I study film on my own. I'm very well versed. I'm an independent filmmaker. I know a lot of multimedia stuff. Maybe I can get in on this. So he expresses some interest. I take the flyer. I give this guy a call later on. Goes back through. I get on the show. Long story short, I get on the show. He says, yeah, you're sure, you sound good. I get to be on the show. Cool. So this show ends up being broadcast out of, and this is, cable access, younger kids. This is YouTube before YouTube, basically. This is total Wayne's World stuff, Between Two Ferns, probably the newer reference. And it was literally that. It's, the stage with the curtain in the background. And, I think we did have a fern. We had a fucking fern on this show. And, some hanging pieces of wood or something in a shape to give it the semblance of a set, and cameras and a setup, and a lot of young local tech school grads working the cameras and whatnot. And this show ended up being hosted by this guy who I don't really think he had any kind of film background or whatnot. He was an ex-cop, an ex-military guy on on an early retirement disability, something for his back or something. I don't know, not really relevant. And he just decided he wanted to host a film critic show, like Siskel and Ebert. He kept saying, like Siskel and Ebert, because that's the only film criticism show anyone had seen, really. So he wants to do this, and it ends up being him hosting the show, a very nice lady, again, not going to give you her name, who I believe was a teacher and a lecturer, otherwise, who was brought on to, because he thought that there should be a woman on the show. Good idea. to be like the co-host, and then me, who was there to be like the fact guy and color commentator, to bring interesting facts and say things and have movie expertise. He basically wanted it to be, they would give the reviews and I would pick them and say, well, actually, Ralph Fassbender, or well, Werner Herzog. I know it's Rainier Fassbender, not Ralph Werner. You know what I mean. So we end up doing the whole thing, and we go through pilot, and we take it up, and it's what you expect. They put up, hey, we saw this movie this week, what do you think? And it eventually gets down into a more conventional review show where, we each kind of say a paragraph or whatnot, and this is going to sound like bragging no matter what, but he starts coming back to me, so he's like, Bob, I know we got you on to do color commentary and, bring out facts and whatnot, but when you go off on a rant about, the movies that you really liked or that you really didn't like, you really know your stuff, it's entertaining, and people are calling up the network, and the network, they're calling up the little channel. This is a small enough town that the local cable access thing is actually a thing there, and, getting letters, emails, whatever counts as a volume of email to them saying, hey, this guy's good, put him on more of the show. So it ends up being like a three-way split where I'm doing most of the reviewing on the show, where they start up and the host of the show opens it and talks about, this is the plot, these are the characters, here's what I thought, blah, blah, and now let's go to Bob, and I, do like the detail bit, and then the nice lady co-host also gives her details and says what she really likes, often had a very interesting alternate perspective, and then we go back and forth. And as this goes on, he ends up, throwing it to me more and more as this goes, because I had, the details, the information. I usually know things about, without having to look them up beforehand, about who directed it, about, these actors, could fill in, because the way that this is being done is he's doing a big live record and then editing it down later, which is not advisably the way to do this. Like, there was no preparation, very little talk beforehand. The guys in the back working the board and mixing and running the cameras thought it was a huge pain in the ass. I couldn't say anything. I did end up doing a lot of the editing. Once it was like 20, 30 episodes in, I offered to come in and take over and help out with the editing because I felt bad, so ended up editing a lot of this show as well, adding titles, making it look a little more professional, that kind of thing. But locally, this actually works out very well for me. As much as you can become a, local figure of notoriety, I will not use the word celebrity, from local cable access show, it was not like, Wayne's World, where, like, in that film they were, like, known people. This was working out pretty well. I would get recognized. I would go to, like, the local movie theater or, like, little local restaurants, and I'd be like, oh, hey, you're Bob, you're from the show, yeah. And I'd say, oh, yeah, yes, that's me, okay, cool, yeah. And it went well. We had a good run on this. There were always a few red flags with the host guy. He generally treated me okay. He had a temper when it came to dealing with the other guys. He was one of those guys who he would constantly talk about other people behind their back to you in a way that was phrased to make it sound like he was giving you some special information, like you're the only one I talk to like this, but you got the sense that he would then turn around and talk about you the same way to other people. This kind of ingratiating, scheming, tactical conversation kind of way. I knew he was, super conservative. Didn't really bug me. This was, 2003. He was a very, big George Bush guy, a very big, let's go get the terrorists, fight the wars guy. It was the way of the time. But I never got the sense that he was a bad guy. He was not a guy that I would have, hung out with, I think, outside of a work situation, other than going out to, get some dinner with him and the other host after the show. But not someone that I thought that I needed to be, worried about in any situation. I didn't know much about him outside of this, other than that he'd been a cop and wasn't, that he'd been in the military and now wasn't, and that he was now working private security on his own, which I do now understand to be something of just a red flag in general as a profession. It's like when someone tells you they're a bounty hunter. No matter what, something's going on there, usually. I should also say that this is a town in Massachusetts that is small enough that, if you did know someone who open carried a gun, which he does, which he did a few times, again, ex-cop, ex-military, not that unusual. I think people have kind of a weird conception about, like, Massachusetts in general, where because you don't see people open carrying, like, guns and firearms in Boston, and people know that Boston's a fairly liberal city, that, like, there's no such thing as guns in Massachusetts, Boston liberals don't carry firearms. That's not true at all. That is not true at all. So yeah, I saw him carry a gun a couple times. Didn't really think anything of it because it's kind of normal for people especially in this sort of smaller, more rural town, to see it's okay. Yeah, there's a guy walking around with an open carry pistol. Maybe not guys with like a rifle slung on their back, but this guy carrying what was basically like a police style sidearm in a duty belt. Yeah, not a big deal. You can probably get a sense of where this is going at this point, I realize. So, round about the year The Passion of the Christ comes out. Yeah, see, now you definitely know where this is going. Which, I think at this point, a lot of people might actually be too young to remember what a big deal. The Passion of the Christ comes out. Huge fucking movie. Huge thing. People are taking their kids to see this piece of shit. And it was a piece of shit, by the way. It's this giant controversy, this basically changes Mel Gibson's entire career. Like, he was on this big upswing. He'd had, Braveheart. He was going to be this, like, gracefully aging, action star. And instead he makes this, like, freak show Jesus movie, in Aramaic, and it's super bloody, and has all this anti-Semitic stuff hovering over it. And if you know the history of anti-Semitic imagery in Christian art, it's all over the goddamn movie as well. Yeah, and all of this business about his crazy father and the freaky version of Catholicism Gibson's obsessed with, but whatever. So, The Passion of the Christ comes out. It's this giant movie, huge cultural thing. And this is still the early sort of days of the internet stuff, where movies, especially something like that, had a pretty good rollout where it was coming out and it was playing. So we didn't do reviews on this show only the weekend they came out. It was like a once every 2 weeks, sometimes once a month kind of show. And eventually, at the point when this was going on. And so The Passion starts to come out, and there's not a lot of discussion about when we're going to review it, because we didn't really talk about the making of the show in general off camera, other than I would get an email saying, like, hey, this is what we're looking at for the next show, make sure you've seen this. And at the time I was just seeing every new movie anyway, so yeah. And we were always reviewing them like a week after they'd come out, so there was always time to go see them. I keep asking, hey, when are we going to get to reviews? Because I'm jazzed up. I'm thinking, naively, I'm thinking, I want to get on this show. I want to really just lay into this and let this piece of crap movie have it. I've already written on like a blog, I think just a really primitive early blog of mine, just a scathing, trashing takedown review of The Passion and all of the anti-Semitic stuff and the stuff about Mel Gibson and whatnot. Just the kind of review that I would have written at the time. It's pretty similar to what I do now, longer form, obviously. And I don't really get a lot of response about it. So eventually, I hear back, because we're planning about it, and I hear back from him, and he says, hey Bob, I'm thinking of doing something a little different for the Passion of the Christ review. And I'm thinking, okay, all right, let's see where this is going. What's this gonna be? And what I find out is that he's concerned about having excessive negativity there, because he's seen a lot of stuff in the media of people saying stuff that's unkind to the movie and to Christianity. And I'm thinking, well, I don't have an issue with Christianity. I'm Catholic. I was raised Catholic. I was an altar boy. Went to Catholic school. I'm confirmed. Went through all the sacraments and whatnot. So, I'm thinking, okay, but, I knew he was a little conservative. It's like, okay, hey, well, we can have a discussion about that. We can debate that on the show. That if he liked it and is very religious about it, and I think it's not good, that's, to me, sounds like an interesting show. So, he asked me to forward him the review. The one that I had written, when I mentioned that I had written it, because he wanted to take a look at it. And I thought, well, yeah, it's publicly posted. I'll forward it to him. Then I get a call. He sends it back before he gives me a call. He says that he showed it to his wife, and that his wife, whom I've never met, I've never met this guy's wife, don't know her, don't really know anything about his family. He says that he showed it to her and that she was very disturbed by what I had written and about this movie. And, he's made notes, and he says, Bob, I think we need to meet somewhere. So I say, oh, okay, dude, where should we meet about this? And this, I will acknowledge, I was young at this point, 2000, this was 2003 or 4. I was too old to not know better in this situation. Like, this is very much Bob, you dumbass, what were you thinking kind of situation. But I was younger than I am now. So, yeah, I would have been about 23, 24 at this point. In any case, I end up going to meet him, and he says, yeah, you're going to come meet me in my car in a parking lot while I'm doing some private security work. Yeah. I know, I can imagine you sitting in your chairs going, the fuck is wrong with you? Why would you do that? Why would you go and meet this guy in his fucking car? You idiot. That is the dumbest goddamn thing I've ever heard. And yeah, that should have been a red flag for me, but I'm kind of thinking, this is business. Part of me is also thinking, shit, I can take him if there's an issue. I probably could not have. I was bigger than him, but... he was also ex-military, ex-cop, usually had a gun on him, so, that was stupid. And I knew roundabout where we were going to be meeting, sparsely populated area, but, not in the middle of nowhere, certainly not compared to where I've been in other situations. The area where it was is much more developed now than it was. So I go to meet this guy in his fucking van, and just picture this is, small town. This is an open, mostly vacant lot adjacent to a big parking lot. He's in the parking lot. This is, I think it was a Sunday, might have been a Saturday or Sunday morning, and he's got this, like the classic, black SUV, and I'm going to meet him. It's the only car in the lot. There's really no one around. I mean, it's off of a major highway, but there's not really anyone around, and he's parked. And he's got his binoculars out because he is supposedly, his security job that day involves keeping an eye on a construction lot that is across the street near a shopping mall, which is not yet open at that point. So it's not open for business that day. The mall had been open for years and years and years before I was born, but it was not open for business. So this must have been a Sunday. Yeah, this was a Sunday. So I get there, and I'm thinking, okay, I'm going to stand outside the car. That's a smart thing, I'm going to stand outside the car. But he tells me that to speak, we really need to get into the car. So like a fucking I recognize, like a fucking idiot, Bob, you fucking idiot, I get in the fucking car. And, because, again, I'm being stupid, and I'm also thinking, this is a fucking film critic job I'm talking about here. I've been out to dinner with this guy and other guys, and just, sat there eating chips and salsa and talking about, we should review Monster on the next show. I think that's a good idea. People are really talking about that a lot with Charlize Theron. She's probably going to get an Academy, or we should, having some discussion about this. If you hear that sound right now, it's begun raining outside, so that's going to make the sound editing interesting on this. So anyway, I'm sitting in this car. It's the middle of the morning, middle of nowhere, black SUV. What I now am getting the sense is a not entirely mentally stable ex-military security contractor guy sitting next to me in the car. He may or may not have been wearing like if not a flak jacket, some kind of protective vest under his stupid jacket. His gun is the one that I can see is in like a car molded holster in the stanchion seat between us. And he's got the printout of my review, and he's looking over his notes on it, and he's telling me how disturbed he is. And what I come to find out is that the things he found disturbing in the Passion review, it wasn't that I used like bad language or said stuff about Mel Gibson. He was disturbed at me pointing out the anti-Semitic imagery and the stuff there that's not actually in the Bible, and he was very, very upset And by the way, most of that review was about the bad, corny, cheesy filmmaking. It was about the hammy acting. It was about the storytelling not really making a lot of sense. It was about the notion of it being just a plotless gore fest that doesn't have any meaning to people who are not already on board with Mel Gibson's bizarro version of Christianity. That was the main crux of the thing, was that this is a badly made film that is also full of, in addition, creepy anti-Semitic stuff. So this fucking guy, he's all upset that I've dared to question this, and he's especially upset that I've raised the Jewish question. He's really stuck on that, and he basically tells me, he says, you see, Bob, my problem is I don't think that it's proper to even review or criticize this movie, because this movie's the truth. This movie's the truth. This movie isn't just about Jesus. Mel Gibson paid attention to the Bible. He followed the text in the scripture. So this movie's not just about Jesus. It is Jesus. And now I'm thinking, shit, and paraphrasing, of course. I didn't have a recorder with me, but, this is why I'm not telling you the guy's name. So now I'm thinking, shit, I should get the fuck out of this car, but I'm not going to run. I'm just going to be very calm about this. And he's like, so I'm not thinking that we should be doing a show criticism. So I'm not going to do a show that's going to be, critical of the movie. I'm not going to review it. And I'm thinking, okay, all right, you just want to talk about it. You don't want to do a review or put star ratings up. Okay, all right, okay. And he says that he wants to have some guys for Jews for Jesus on the show to talk about how it's not anti-Semitic. He's going on and on about this. I remember this. Oh, coming back. I remember this. He says to me, and Bob, the Jews are so pissy about this movie, but I gotta tell you, we gave them Schindler's List, and now we get to have one. Those exact words pretty much come out. And then it's like, this is not a fair comparison. I don't say that, but I'm like, this is not a fair comparison. So already in my head, I'm thinking, okay, the job is almost certainly over. I gotta get the fuck out of this car. So I'm just trying to talk. Oh yeah, file just finished rendering. So I gotta wrap this up a little bit. So I gotta hit pause right here. Be right back. And I'm back. Hopefully that's not too awkward of an edit. That certainly was, though. So I'm in the car with this guy, and it's going crazy. And I finally just come out to, what do you want me to do about this? What do you have to say to me? Because I don't know that I can participate in a criticism show that doesn't do criticism. I mean, it's your show. You do whatever you want, pal. Seriously, do whatever you want. Just not to me, hopefully. But I don't know if I can participate in that episode. And he says, well, Bob, I guess this is where we part ways. And basically, he threw me out of the show. He kicked me out because I would not... He gave me the choice. He said, hey, can you get on the show? He basically wanted me to go on and just kind of participate in the discussion about it, but co-sign his whole thing that it's not anti-Semitic, that this is a Christian thing to go see, and that Christians should go see it. And, he was going to be preaching about the message of the movie. And I wasn't going to be down for that, and I wasn't going to do it. I wouldn't do that. I'm not going to lie about what my opinion is, and I'm not going to participate in, propaganda for this. And really, he's creeping me out right now. The whole, they had Schindler's List, now we're going to get ours. That's, right now, you would, call that some straight-up alt-right shit. And we know what alt-right really is. So, yeah. That fucking sucked. And I was pissed off. So he lets me out of the car. He says, hey, we're going to part ways. There you go. So I get out of the car and I leave. I'm pissed off. I'm really pissed off because even as, this guy, not my favorite guy, obviously, I really liked doing this. Doing this is what convinced me that I was like, I kind of like actually being on camera. And, still haven't learned to not say and stop stuttering, obviously, on camera, but on a live read. But this really told me, I kind of like this. I like performing on camera. I like doing my own stuff, and got me into that side of it, and was a very big influence on getting Game Overthinker started up, and which took me off in that whole direction. I also just had a really good time doing it, and, it was a rush getting, beyond on TV, in a manner of speaking. treated like an authority on film and movies. It was like, yeah, this was like, hey, I'm actually using this degree for something. Yay! It was cool, and I was friendly with, still am friendly actually, with a couple of the guys who worked in the tech side of it and ran the station that it was on. And it was a real bummer to get stuff, and especially for that, because I figured this is some shit that only happens in movies. That, the guy, ironically, that the dude who's running it turns out to be a fucking religious wacko and, threatens you and wants to get off. But, I got off of it, and I just kind of said, fine, fuck it, whatever. Went back to work, continued plugging away on writing screenplays and making short films with my friends and colleagues, and just getting back to what my life had been. And, so didn't really think a lot of it as things went on. And a couple of months go by, and the show wasn't even something that I could watch in the town that I lived in. Like, I had to get VHS tapes of it from the town that it was in and watch them myself, but it would air there. So I never knew when his Passion special was going to air. I didn't care to see it. I was done. I was fucking pissed enough that it had wound up like this, that I just kind of washed my hands of the whole thing, didn't talk to anyone about it, just kind of said, fuck it, fuck this guy, fuck all of it, and just went on. So days before I learned to hold a grudge. So a few months go by, and I haven't heard about this, I haven't thought about it, and I get a weird email out of the blue from the nice lady who had been the other co-host, who I guess had stuck around and had participated in the show. Which, by the way, the only other thing I hear about it is that the show had ended after he did the Passion special, that they just hadn't done any more. And I can only figure that it hadn't come together very well. Again, this will make me sound like an arrogant asshole. I don't know, unless they found another color commentary guy for, to do it. I don't know necessarily what show they would have done without me on there to throw in the jokes and the humor and the actual known information about the films other than what you just seen in them on the show. I don't know what the show would have been, but unless he was really just going to start preaching about the Passion or whatnot. So whatever. So I get this email, basically, that says, from the nice lady, who says that I should watch out because the guy who ran the show, the host guy, said some really scary things, and that he might be a danger to me, and that she was really afraid, and that I should look out. Really could have used some more information than that, so I tracked down I still had her phone number written down somewhere, so I called her up and I said, hey, what is the fucking deal? What's going on here? Does this gesture still register to like people who've only ever known cell phones, that this is the I'm on the phone gesture? This never made sense to me as representing a telephone, like when it was supposed to be a telephone, but I guess, I forget what it was. I saw like a sci-fi movie once where, like, before smartphones had happened, there was like the future of cell phones was going to be like a ring that goes here and on your thumb, and then you just hold it up and it actually acted like a phone, and it seemed like kind of a cool idea before we knew that we'd all just have a fucking tricorder. Anyway, so I call her up and I'm like, hey, so what fucking happened? What's the deal here? What's going on? And that's my serious voice. And she said, basically, I'm not going to do an impression of her, and I'm not going to try to remember the whole conversation. What it comes down to is that this fucking guy, who had not really registered in my thoughts after this, other than thinking about being pissed that it had ended like this, because I had, even when this show was a big-ish deal in this little town, I had like a dozen other things going on. I was hanging out with friends. I was working in jobs I got paid for a lot. I was working a lot mostly. I was dating, I was hanging out, I was making short films, writing short films, doing like special effects tests for little short films, getting stuff done, helping out with my family around the house. So it didn't occupy a lot of my thoughts, but apparently this guy had never stopped thinking about being pissed at me for not helping him preach about Mel Gibson's weird version of Jesus. Because he had apparently, I guess, shown up at the studio to record the show, which they'd done, and I've still never seen this episode, but people tell me it was just garbage. But apparently he had shown up and had been at the meetings telling people, hey, you know, that Bob, he's a crazy guy. Yeah, I'm the crazy guy. He's a crazy guy. And, you know, he doesn't like Jesus. He's against Jesus. That's why I'm not having him on the show, because he's against Christ. You know, he's against this movie, and he's against... I think the subtext of it was that he thought I was like part of the, you know, the Jew conspiracy against Mel Gibson and his sacred fake Jesus movie crusade. And he had gone on and on about this, about how he was thinking, you know, I'm worried that he's gonna show up at the studio and try to disrupt the show. I wouldn't even have known when they were going to record this. I never said anything about that. I had, like, wished him well and said, dude, you know, good luck with your show. You know, like, I hadn't, like, gotten pissed at him. You know, this wasn't even, like, a thing I was getting paid to do, you know? So, I don't know where he got this shit. And what it had come down to was he had, like, taken out his sidearm, you know, his fucking gun, and brandished a loaded weapon in the fucking cable access recording studio, and had, like, you know, yeah, been, like, waving it around, supposedly, as was told to me by at least two people, that he had, like, brandished his weapon around, and it was, like, just a slide action pistol. I think it was, like, a Glock 9 or something. And he said, and had told people, you know, if he shows up, don't worry, I'm strapped, I'm gonna protect you, I got this. You know, like, he's a big fucking man to protect him from the 24-year-old college age kid who's gonna come in and go booga, you shouldn't do your shot. What the fuck did he think I was gonna do? I don't know what he thought. And so they were apparently worried enough about this that they shit-canned him from this, they canceled the show and whatnot, but she was scared enough about this that she thought that, you know, he was going to be, like, coming for me. Because after they, like, canceled this, the guy, I guess, dropped off the grid. Like, no one could find him. He wasn't answering his phone calls. You know, I didn't really know where he lived, so I couldn't, like, check, and I didn't want to. But, yeah, so, you know, she was convinced that this dude was, like, you know, going to be running around looking to take a shot at me or something. And the way that she, you know, verbalized all of this, I kind of believed it too. I was kind of thinking, like, shit, do I have to worry about this? Do I got to worry about this fucking psychopath coming after me? But you know, ex-military, he's got to know how to do something, right? And he's got a gun. At the time, I did not own a gun, so I was fucking worried for a good long time, and I was shaken up. Like, I had never dealt with shit like this before. You know, I don't know how many people often deal with shit like this, but, you know, because I dealt with some pretty fucking obnoxious, irritating people in my life. I'd had, you know, certainly, if he had come for me, spoiler, he never did. I've never seen this guy again ever in my life. If you're looking for some kind of, like, exciting showdown in the rain, John Wick bullshit, I think it is. No, it's not like that. It's just some nutcase who I never heard from again. But I was pretty shook up by this. I had, I've had, like, a gun near me in a tense situation before. I've been in fights. I've had people pull knives on me. I've had people take swings at me. I've taken swings at people. I'm from Lynn, Massachusetts, here near Boston. It can be a rough area. It certainly has its rough neighborhoods, and I hung out in a lot of them. So, you know, growing up, so I was not. I'm not like alien to having to take care of myself. But like the idea of, you know, some ex-military psycho, you know, like running around gunning for me, the which sounds nuts now, yeah, but the idea that this might be a thing really shook me the fuck up at the time. I was pretty messed up about this. I was just like, shit, I'm concerned. I actually went and you know, like, left the house and, like, I gotta get out, I gotta go take a breather about this. Went and talked to, just hung out a little bit with my best friend at the time, still my best friend. You know, hung out with him at, he was still working at another Blockbuster, because that's where a lot of my circle of friends that came was people I'd worked with at Blockbusters and Suncoast and whatnot, and hung out, you know, just kind of annoyed him at work for a little while on a slow day, while putting away tapes and shooting the shit. and just to calm myself down, like, dude, do you think I got to worry about this? This is a thing, and calm me down a little bit. Eventually, kind of make myself feel better. I ended up going to see a movie, and the thing I went to see, just to take my mind off it, I went to see the second Scooby-Doo movie, which was still in theaters. I think it was new in theaters at the time. I think it was Scooby-Doo Monsters Unleashed, and now I was someone who despised the first Scooby-Doo movie. I thought it was just awful. I hated what they did with the characters. They went off and did this whole other thing. I thought, there was so much potential to do something really funny here, and I just loathed it. I think if I saw it again now, I'd probably think it was harmless, but at the time, I was pissed, because I thought, that there was potential to do at least something as good as, like, the first Brady Bunch movie, which was a really funny deconstructing kind of thing. But yeah, so I go to see Scooby-Doo 2, and which I'd heard was better than the first one, and that this had more control over it. Obviously, though, I'm not going to try to do like a surprise reveal thing, because I think anyone listening to this can probably figure out what the present-day connection here is that the two Scooby-Doo movies were both written by James Gunn, recently fired from Guardians of the Galaxy, unjustly because of Nazi bullshit. He was attacked by Nazis. He's not a Nazi himself. Yeah. So I go to see Scooby-Doo 2 just thinking, okay, I'm either going to hate this like the first one, or it'll be harmless, whatever. It'll just take my mind off of this thing that's freaking me out in my personal life right now. And I just fucking, loved it. Thought, I was like, oh my god, this is awesome. I was just, because, the second one is the one where they drop a lot of the, kind of like feigning at modern pop culture from the first one, and trying to smuggle adult jokes into a kid's movie and deconstruct, and the whole Scrappy-Doo business, and they pretty much just do a modern take on a Scooby-Doo thing, and I just thought it was a riot, and I was like, wow, why didn't they make this the first movie? I really thought, and it was very plausibly because I was just having a miserable fucking day with all of this, but I came out of that thing and wow, I feel so much better because I had so much fun watching this completely disposable but really fun movie. Seriously, I think a lot of people skipped the second Scooby-Doo even still because they hated the first one so much, and I really did. And so I ended up feeling better about that, and eventually, a couple weeks go by, nothing comes of this. Again, spoiler alert, I'm standing right here in front of you, and walking around just fine. So no, the nutcase never showed up in my life, never found me, never tried to shoot me. I don't know if he wanted to, or if ever that was a thing. It's very plausible that the nice lady who called me out of genuine concern was overinflating things, but and I think I'm justified in being freaked out about that, especially again, you younger folks, the first 5 or 6 year stretch post 9/11, everyone in the country was pretty much on edge about fucking everything, just kind of just anything about people stalking around and guns and getting surprised by people on the street and whatnot was just sort of, oh shit, we don't know. We had gone through a long stretch of nothing really happening, and then suddenly everything happened, and there was a lot of the general sense of panicked paranoia that now seems very normal was new to us then. Oh, it just hit me like a wave, how depressing that is. Anyway, so yeah. So that and that's the story of the beginning and end of my first professional job as a well, I wasn't getting paid, but certainly my first should have been professional style gig as a film critic. Was getting plucked out of a blockbuster, fired in a situation that seemed like something out of Breaking Bad because I wouldn't pretend to like Mel Gibson's cheesy Jesus propaganda, and apparently threatened sight unseen with a gun over the same Mel Gibson Jesus propaganda. That's the story of how that happened. The asterisk on that, relating to the Scooby-Doo business about how, I eventually made myself feel better that day by watching the second fucking Scooby-Doo movie, is years later, I'm now working as an actual professional film critic for The Escapist, doing Escape to the Movies. And I'm starting to get interviews because I'm hooked up with publicists in the city of Boston, and you don't just get press invites to movie premieres. You also get press invites to interview filmmakers when they come through to promote certain movies. Usually in a city like Boston, it's smaller independent movies that are looking to get as much exposure as possible, so they'll go to secondary markets like Boston, which has the advantage of being a decent-sized city that is next to New York, so they can stop over. So that's how I interviewed the director of Splice. That's how I interviewed Neil Marshall and his wife, that kind of thing. And I get an interview coming through, and they say, hey, do you want to get an interview for the movie Super? And a lot of movie turned the interviews for Super down because the interviews were not with Rainn Wilson or Ellen Page, the stars of Super. I picked the interviews with Super up because they said, yeah, you can interview James Gunn. And I thought, well, fuck. At the time, a lot of, professionals didn't really grok who James Gunn was. They were like, okay, he wrote Super, that's going to make him big. But, me, I'm thinking, oh shit, James Gunn, Romeo and Juliet, all of the stuff that he'd done, all of these cool projects that he'd done, and, the two Scooby-Doo movies as well. And, I'd been following his career from when he was back with Troma. I'm an actual fan of his, so damn right I'm going to interview James. I'll go in. So I got this thing, I got an hour-long one-on-one with James Gunn. I'm pretty sure you can still find this out there. It's definitely in one of the collected volumes of workbooks, I believe so. So I go through much of this interview and, get all of the details about Super, what he thinks about the movie, what I think I asked him what he thought about how it compared to Kick-Ass coming out at the same time. Just a really, really good, and just got a real good sense that you were talking to a really smart and also really decent guy, which again, at the time, people knew him as a schlock horror director with a really nasty sense of humor overall, which has kind of been now used against him by fucking Nazis. But he, just such a decent guy whose main concern in the making of this was not the shock horror elements of it or the nastier elements of it, but the looking at the pain and the heartache of these characters. And, towards the end of the interview, which was just a really good interview, just felt very personable, it had, we were now off the record, the recorder was off, and I was saying, I'm really glad to have, gotten to talk to you. This was really great. I've been a big fan from a while back. I didn't bring anything to sign because that's, I don't like to do that on interviews. That always seems tacky to me. But, if I had, I would have brought the copy of, my original copy. But everything I need to know about filmmaking, I learned from The Toxic Avenger that he co-wrote with Lloyd Kaufman. And he said, oh yeah, that was a great experience. I really liked working with Troma and whatnot. And I happened to mention, I was like, I tell people they got to check out your stuff because it's great. And, I had happened to, like an idiot, I say, and I get, a lot of people, they don't, because, and this is the sort of thing you should never say to, like, a filmmaker when you're interviewing them, even if it's, like, the truth. I say, because, and I always get, like, blood from people, it's like, oh, man, I don't want to, he made Scooby-Doo, and he looked very hurt by that statement. And, he kind of sunk back in his chair. He's like, oh, God, Scooby, we tried, we had a real vision for what we wanted to do with the first one, and they flipped it around, and they made us do a whole different thing, and it was just not what we were trying for. And he looked like it was still a serious wound that the first Scooby-Doo did not come out as what he wanted it to be. And I felt so bad. So I as, the publicist just get me to leave the room, I'm like, I didn't mean for comment, like, I just need you to know that the second Scooby-Doo, the second one, which I know you also did, is I saw that movie on, like, the worst day, one of the worst days of my life, and it completely turned me around and made me feel better, and I think it's, like, it's the perfect Scooby-Doo movie, and it's just a great movie, and he looked so grateful that someone said so, because remember, the first Scooby-Doo movie was a huge hit that the critics hated. Second one got pretty decent reviews and did not get a big audience, and he looked very, very grateful. And he kind of said, he's like, oh man, thank you. And film critic interview subjects are always, saying, oh, they always look appreciative. He seemed to genuinely appreciate it, and it really stuck with me. I was like, I think this guy is, like he's not a Hollywood phony. He's a real guy. This is someone who's very real, and that stuck with me, and it was one of the things that, stayed in my mind when they said, yeah, Marvel's gonna get this, guy who mostly makes cheesy horror movies and Slither and stuff to do Guardians of the Galaxy. What the hell is this gonna be? And I was thinking, I had a long conversation with that guy that ended on a really kind of personable note. I think he's gonna make something special with that, and I turned out to be very correct about that, and that was pretty great. So yeah, and that's the story of that. Thank you for watching. I hope this cut together into something recognizable and coherent. If you enjoy, please like, subscribe, share. Check out the moviebob Patreon. Check out all the other stuff. Look for the big picture on the Escapist. Look for my reviews on geek.com. Follow all of the other stuff and links down the bottom. And I will see you around on In Bob We Trust.